Live and uninterrupted, the candidates for New York City Mayor. Sponsored by WCBS TV, WLNY TV 1055, CBS Newsradio 880, 1010 Wins, El Diario La Prensa, and Common Cause New York. Here is your moderator, CBS 2 anchor, Maurice Dubois.
And good evening. Tonight we are live at the City University of New York Graduate Center in Manhattan, where the candidates for mayor will square off for the next hour. Tonight is one of the final times you will see the candidates debate live on television. And we bring you this debate in cooperation with the Campaign Finance Board. These debates are designed to hold the candidates accountable. It's a rare opportunity for you to see and hear the major candidates side by side, unfiltered and live. This debate is part of the city's official debate program for the 2013 elections, administered by the New York City Campaign Finance Board. The CFB administers the city's landmark public matching fund program, which further strengthens the role of average New Yorkers and their small dollar contributions in city elections. The nonpartisan, objective criteria for this debate were set months in advance. And two quick program notes for you now. You can also see tonight's debate in Spanish on WLNY TV 1055, and you can join the debate discussion online by tweeting #NYC2013. Now, the candidates for mayor, the Democratic candidate, Public Advocate Bill de Blasio, and Republican candidate, former MTA Chairman Joe Lhota. Gentlemen, welcome to you both, and candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question and 30 seconds for rebuttal. By coin toss, Mr. de Blasio, you get the first question. Sir, if you were the driver of that SUV on the West Side Highway, confronted by a mob of bikers, your wife and infant inside there with you, you've already called 911, you feel like your lives are being threatened, what would you have done?
Well, as I think a lot of people in this city know, nothing is more important to me than my family, my wife and my daughter Chiara, my son Dante. I would defend them with all I had. You know, once you've done the right thing and called 911, if you're under attack, the most important thing to do is protect your family, and that's what I do with everything in my being. But the bottom line is we have to address this problem of these motorcycle gangs. It's not acceptable. They think they can break the law and they can slow down traffic and, in fact, cause potential real danger to motorists and others. I've said the NYPD needs to follow through on its efforts to crack down on these gangs, to make very clear to them there will be very serious consequences to any efforts to disrupt traffic, to take the law into their own hands. And I think that message has to be sent clearly. And one of the things I've argued is it's very important for the NYPD to get out face-to-face with these gang members and tell them very pointedly what the consequences will be. I think we have the laws we need to address this problem right now.
Thank you,
I think
sir.
It's about strong enforcement, and it's about following through and making sure there are consequences.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota, what would you have done in that situation?
I, too, would have defended my family with everything that I have. After you call 911, you expect the police department to show up as quickly as possible. We need to make sure that our police department is aware when gangs come into New York. One of the things that I want to do is to make sure that we change the laws. We could possibly, as a state senator has put forward, a piece of legislation that says no more than 6 motorcycles can gather together at one time and drive on any one of our highways or streets. That may be a possible answer to it. But what we really need to do is to make sure that the police are there and that they enforce the law as best as possible.
Mr. Lhota, your campaign ad dramatically portrays mayhem in our city if Mr. de Blasio is elected. Exactly what would be reckless or dangerous about him and policing? And tell us exactly how you see the streets of New York becoming unsafe. Are we talking squeegee men, graffiti, what?
We're talking anything that's possible because, you know, Bill de Blasio served in the administration of David Dinkins. And during that period of time, we had 2,000 murders a year. We had, the last time we had a race riot in the city of New York. Bill, when you look at all of the proposals that he's put forward, they're not about changing the laws or having proactive policing. The reality is Mr. de Blasio, in the process of going through all this, is he is actually bringing us backwards. Look, we need to make sure that our streets are safe. We have to support the police department. We have to continue stop, question, and frisk. We need to actually change it. But what's more important is that we cannot handcuff the police department. Mr. de Blasio supports having an inspector general, which is absolutely not needed for the police department. He supports the city council bill, which actually puts onerous requirements on the police department, and it's having an extreme chilling effect on their ability to do their job. In fact, they can now be sued personally in this process. Everything that Bill de Blasio has talked about in public safety, I believe, is reckless. It'll push us back to where we were.
30 seconds for rebuttal, sir.
There's a number of inaccuracies in what Mr. Lhota says. He obviously doesn't understand the recent legislation. The bottom line is this: I believe in a strong NYPD, 34,000 plus officers with the tools they need to do the job, and the NYPD is doing a great job. I believe an independent inspector general is a smart form of check and balance to make sure we're doing things right, to make sure that civil liberties and individual liberties are being recognized. And there's nothing that would handcuff police. But Mr. Lhota should be ashamed of an ad that tries to divide us, that's based on fear-mongering, that takes us back to the worst impulses we saw when he worked for Rudy Giuliani. We need a mayor who's going to bring us together, not someone who's going to be a fear-monger and try and divide us. We've left those days behind in New York City.
30 seconds.
There's nothing divisive about that ad whatsoever. And I'm the only one standing up here who's a bipartisan person. I did work for Rudy Giuliani. I worked for him, and he was a Republican mayor who actually, I believe, began the renaissance of this city. I've also worked for Governor Andrew Cuomo. Mr. de Blasio is nothing but a partisan. All he wants to do is attack, attack, and attack. And the reality is, what this city needs is someone who will bring people together. That's what I've done my entire life, whether working for Giuliani or working for Cuomo, given difficult tasks to get the job done.
Next question is related, gentlemen.
Maurice, just a quick response. Mr. Lhota was the right-hand man of Rudy Giuliani when he was going out of his way to divide this city. It was not a good period in our city's history. We should not repeat it. The ad is filled with images that try to create fear and negative feelings, and he should be ashamed of it.
Thank you, sir. Next question for you. New polling is showing that voters are much more concerned, Mr. de Blasio, with keeping the crime rate down than reforming stop and frisk. 62 to 30%. What do you say to that?
New polling showed a couple of things. It showed that voters are very concerned about keeping our city safe. Obviously, they understand the incredible strides we've made and the great work done by the NYPD, and we want to keep that going strong. I believe we can do it even better. We bring police and community back together by ending the overuse of stop and frisk and the division it's caused. But the other thing you saw in this recent poll is people believe, by a clear, wide margin, they believe that we can make the city safer and end the overuse of stop and frisk and the abuses of stop and frisk that have unfortunately caused a rift between police and community in many neighborhoods of the city. You know what? Talk to beat cops and they'll tell you. They don't want a stop and frisk quota holding them back from doing the kind of police work they were trained to do. They don't want to do racial profiling. They understand that we have to ban that practice so we can get on with the best policing practices to keep us safe. We have the best police force in the country. We have the best technology. We have the ComStat system, which is the best strategic tool for policing. Let's focus on those strengths and move away from the things that unfortunately have caused a lack of partnership between the police and community.
Thank you, sir.
That's what people in the city actually want to see. They want to see both those things achieved at once.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota.
This past weekend, we had 20 shootings in the city of New York. 7 people died. We need to make sure that we continue to have stop and frisk. The people understand that. There is absolutely no room in this city for racial profiling. And if any cop does racially profile, he should probably be, he should be separated from service. That said, the people of New York fully understand everything that the NYPD has done. They've done a magnificent job. They have been able to reduce our crime by 73% over the last 20 years.
Thank you, sir. Next question goes to Mr. Lhota, please. We've got an hour, right? The NYPD says its surveillance of mosques and Muslim groups is legal, and it's keeping the city safe. Would you continue that program?
Yes, I would continue that program. The NYPD and Commissioner Ray Kelly, when they started this counterintelligence, counterterrorism program in the Intel Division, what he did was to make sure that the federal government in the Handshoe Agreement was updated to not only look at internal but also external terrorists. Here's what the police are allowed to do, and they're doing this in conjunction with the United States Justice Department. They are allowed to follow targets. That target may go into a supermarket, so they'll follow them into the supermarket. That target may go into a mosque or a church or a temple, and they'll follow them into that house of religion. The reality is they are not going after entire communities. They are going after individuals, and they're following those individuals into various different meetings. Mr. de Blasio and I get get the same briefings from the NYPD. I understand what they're doing, why they're doing it, and believe me, they have kept us safe over the last 12 years. We have had 16 different terrorist incidents thwarted by the NYPD.
Thank you, sir. Mr. de Blasio, you get 1 minute. Same question.
Very quickly, on the previous point, because it's pertinent to this question as well. According to police statistics, 90% of the people currently stopped are innocent in every way, shape, and form. That's why the stop and frisk policy, as it's currently created, doesn't work, because it's reaching the wrong people and it's creating alienation between police and community when we need partnership and a close working relationship between police and community. That's also important for fighting terror. Look, NYPD has done an incredible job at keeping us safe from terror. We have 1,000 officers on anti-terror duty, and that's exactly the right thing to do. But when it comes to protecting the balance between public safety and civil liberties, our U.S. Constitution obliges us to work every single day to strike that balance the right way. I say very clearly, if surveillance is based on specific leads, it is appropriate. But if it's not based on specific leads, it may not be, and that's why we need an independent inspector general to make sure there's the kind of checks and balances that, by the way, we have at the CIA, the FBI, and almost every major police department in the country. That kind of oversight is healthy and will help the NYPD to do its job better and work more closely with the communities it serves.
Here's what's wrong with the Inspector General legislation that went past and was passed by the City Council. All of the agencies that you talked about, the FBI, the CIA, the MTA had an Inspector General. The MTA's Inspector General, as with all the others, did not have the right to question the boss's strategy and decisions. But this Inspector General at City Council can, in fact, question the strategies and the approach and the tactics of the police commissioner and his entire command. That is wrong. An Inspector General, you want him to audit? Great. You want him to inspect? Great. You want him to question the strategy? That's wrong. That's the job of the mayor. And you, as a candidate for mayor, should allow that responsibility to stay with the mayor.
Let me be clear on this, Maurice.
15 seconds, please.
Of course, it is the mayor's job to choose the right police commissioner and then to lead and manage that police commissioner. But an independent inspector general has been proven to work at the CIA, FBI, and every major police department in the country because they question policies that may not be working. There's nothing wrong with checks and balances. It's the American way.
Okay, gentlemen.
And independent oversight is healthy for the NYPD.
Gentlemen, thank you. Let's move on. Mr. de Blasio, your big idea, universal pre-K, and you say popular support will force Albany to raise taxes on people making $500,000 a year or more, from 3.8 to 4.3% or so. But it's going to be an election year, right, for state lawmakers. Governor Cuomo says it's not happening.
Well, that's not accurate.
Dead on arrival.
Respectfully.
That's what he said.
Respectfully, that's not what he said. There's a quote in the paper the other day where he says he would keep an open mind on this issue.
If it doesn't work out, sir, what's your plan B?
As I said, Governor Cuomo said, he said it to me, he said it in the papers, he would keep an open mind on the issue. I've said very clearly, we're going to get a tax on people who make $500,000 or more, so we can have full-day pre-K for every child in the city, so we can have after-school programs for every middle school child, so we can bring our school system up to date, so we can lighten the burden on parents all over the city, so we can prepare our kids for the 21st century economy. We have to do it. It's strategically crucial. Now, I believe the combination of the fact that people want these improvements in our schools, they want this support for parents, and they believe it's fair to ask the wealthy to do a little more. Those who are doing very well, $500,000 or more, are actually doing better all the time. You see what's going on with the stock market? It's been very, very strong in recent months.
Sir, if it doesn't happen,
we can safely say that there will be tremendous popular support, and it's clear to me that we can go to Albany with the wind in our sails of that popular support and get this.
Sir, if it doesn't happen, is it a 5-year plan? This is an election year coming up.
It's a 5-year plan for full-day pre-K and after school for every middle school child. And the point is, if we want to get this done, we have to focus on the positive notion that this is what the people want, and we can prevail upon Albany. You know, New York City has gone up to Albany many times and said, this is what our city needs. It's part of how we got our police force,
I think we got it.
that we needed to fight crime.
We got it, sir.
And the history is we get it passed in Albany.
Mr. Lhota, same topic. Your thoughts?
Bill de Blasio doesn't have a plan B. He just told you by talking as long as he did without ever giving you a plan B. He makes promises that he knows he can't keep. And I heard the words of Andrew Cuomo. I'm the one who most recently worked for him. He was crystal clear. This is dead on arrival. The reality is Bill de Blasio makes promises over and over that he can't keep. You know, in downtown Brooklyn, where we now have a new athletic facility, Bill de Blasio was instrumental in making sure that that developer built affordable housing. Well, it's been 2 years now since the Barclays Center has opened, and they're not even in the ground with affordable housing. You know why? Bill de Blasio keeps taking contributions from Bruce Ratner. Bruce Ratner actually paid for his 50th birthday party. The reality is he makes promises he can't keep. We need universal pre-K, but we're not going to get it through a tax increase. We need it, and we need it now.
You know, Maurice, I have to respond. 2 quick points. One, if we're going to get anything done to help children, to help families, we have to be bold, we have to be progressive, we have to be visionary. Mr. Lhota says he wants to address early child education, but he hasn't offered a plan to actually come up with the revenue to do it. We need the independent revenue. And the only way we're going to get it is by building the public support and saying this is a priority for the people of New York City. On the question of affordable housing, I have fought for the kind of development that would maximize affordable housing in this city. I haven't seen Mr. Lhota focus on trying to develop more affordable housing for the people of this city.
Let's finish.
So the point is, I am proud of the fact that that development will, when it's done, yield thousands of units for affordable housing for the people of Brooklyn. I'll make sure it happens.
Well, let's finish on pre-K here. 30 seconds to rebut that, Mr. Lhota.
Look, on the pre-K issue, you can pay for it. Right now, Bill wants to raise by charging taxes on the rich. And by the way, if you're in the middle class, hold on to your wallet, because no one has ever been able to just tax the rich. The reality is we need universal pre-K. The amount of money that Bill wants to raise is somewhere between $500 and $550 million. That's less than 1% of the entire budget. When I was the budget director, I used to get 3% and 4% savings every year to allow Mayor Giuliani and Speaker Peter Vallone the opportunity to expand programs just like this.
Okay.
I'll find a budget director who will do an even better job than I did.
Thank you, sir.
But coming to affordable housing, let me tell you something.
We'll get to that.
For 5 years, I did nothing but finance low and moderate income housing.
He also is talking about tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations that will blow a hole in the city budget, a $2 billion hole in the city budget, according to the New York Times. So Mr. Lhota shouldn't kid around about the ability to find money for early childhood if he's offering tax cuts to the wealthy and corporations.
We'll get to that in just a moment. Mr. de Blasio, one more thought here. Many middle-class and affluent New Yorkers are concerned you're going to raise taxes, right? They scare businesses and drive down the tax base. What do you say to them?
I think asking those who make $500,000 or more for their tax rate to go from 3.9% to 4.4%, which is less than the tax rate Michael Bloomberg set for high-income people 10 years ago. I think it's fair. In fact, I think it'll make it a better city for everyone, including the wealthy, over the long term, because we'll have a better school system. We'll have a stronger workforce. We'll have a stronger social fabric if we provide full-day pre-K and we provide after-school programs. So I would argue it's in the interest of all. But I emphasize this is a modest increase in taxes on the wealthy. In fact, it will not only make us stronger as a city in terms of our children, our families, it will give us a better business climate, because one of the things that business leaders care the most about is that there's a strong educational system and a strong workforce, and this will give us the foundation to do that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota, rebut. 30 seconds.
You know, I'm very concerned about the way Mr. de Blasio thinks. Let me tell you what I think regarding tax increases. Anybody who tells you that they're only going to tax the rich always ends up taxing the middle class. So for those of you out there, the middle class, hold on to your wallets. But let me tell you something else. I actually believe having safe streets is a civil right. I believe having greater schools, better schools, excellent schools is a civil right. Raising taxes, that's a civil wrong, and Mr. de Blasio doesn't know the difference between a civil right and a civil wrong.
Maurice, just quickly.
15 seconds.
Mr. Lhota is offering a Republican trickle-down vision of tax cuts for the wealthy, tax cuts for corporations. Again, New York Times said it would blow a $2 billion hole in our annual budget. So he's saying, watch out, taxes will grow. Well, I've been very clear. I will tax people who make $500,000 or more. Mr. Lhota is rushing to give those same wealthy people a tax cut, to give big corporations a tax cut. That's a danger to the future.
I'm not giving big corporations a tax cut. They have to create jobs. They have to create jobs, and the jobs will go to the unemployed and those who are underemployed, better paying jobs. No one believes that a tax cut is just going to be giving away money to the rich.
Mr. Lhota,
gentlemen, we're going to move on.
You talk about classic Republican bait and switch. It is trickle down.
We're going to move on. Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota, regarding charter schools, what do you say to parents of public school students who feel their kids are being squeezed out of their own buildings by co-location of charter schools in those buildings?
Charter schools are not squeezing anyone out of regular public schools. Every single charter school that I've been to that's in a public school and co-located, it's generally on the top floor or in the basement. And when you ask the question, what was it before? It was a place where they stored books or they stored materials. The reality is we need to expand the number of charter schools. Our teachers need to be able to get the proper professional development and training. And our parents absolutely need school choice. The reason why parents marched on the Brooklyn Bridge a few weeks ago is because Mr. de Blasio is threatening to annihilate our charter schools. And they believe it. You start charging them rent, they're gone. If you start charging them or not allowing them to co-locate in schools, it is wrong. Believe me, charter schools are public schools, and we have to understand that. We have to respect that. And what we really need to do is look at the entire system and make the entire system better. Charter schools is not just the answer. Making sure that we have excellent schools all the way across the board is what I will do as mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Lhota. Mr. de Blasio, 93% of the kids in charter schools are black or Hispanic. Same topic here. Their parents are thrilled at this opportunity. Some of the schools outperform public schools on standardized testing and graduation rates. So then the question would be, why would you want to rein them in?
First, as to Mr. Lhota's fear-mongering, his constant tactic, I don't want to annihilate charter schools. I've said we should work with the current charter school cap, that good charter schools will continue to work with, that charter schools who aren't doing their job, we're going to push them to do better and to be more inclusive of every type of child. And ones that are very wealthy should pay some rent. That's what I've said. Ones that don't have a lot of money shouldn't. So look, first of all, it's clear from the answer Mr. Lhota gave, he hasn't spent a lot of time recently in public schools because charter schools often get, in co-locations, the very best parts of the schools, and they often do dislocate the needs of the existing traditional public school. That's a fact, and that's why there's been such feeling and concern from public school parents. Folks want to make sure if another school is coming into their school building where their child is, the most precious thing in their world, their child, that it's going to be handled right, that their child is not going to lose out in the bargain because a charter school happened to have more power or influence. And during the Bloomberg years, charter schools did have more power and influence. So I've simply said they're not going to be favored anymore. I'll work with them, but they're not going to be favored anymore. 95% of our kids go to traditional public schools, as my kids did.
Thank you, sir.
95%. That's where we have to focus our attentions.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on. Mr. Lhota, you say you want to build a new version of Battery Park City on Manhattan's east side. Wouldn't that mean extending a landfill out into the East River? And given how sandy floodwaters overwhelmed our shoreline, most notably places like NYU and Bellevue hospitals, how is building on the shore feasible, much less a good idea?
It is a very good idea, and it's wrong, Maurice, to say that it would be done with landfill. We have numerous places where we're excavating through the rock in the city of New York. We have the 2nd Avenue subway, which will continue in the second phase. They do nothing but pull out rock. We need to use that rock to be able to protect our shores and move the island out. We don't need to do it with landfill. You know, Battery Park City wasn't built with landfill. Battery Park City was built with the dirt that was taken out to build the underground at the World Trade Center. There's no landfill there. That's dirt that came from Manhattan. So it's wrong to consider it landfill, making people think that it's garbage or refuge or anything like that. Look, the idea of building out on the East River, here's why I think it's so important. I was downtown on that Monday night almost a year ago, and the flooding that happened downtown excluded Battery Park City. It was higher up. The reason why the flooding had a problem is at the very tip of the island, it came in, and it came in at a lower level. We need to build up the entire island to protect our assets and to protect human life.
Thank you, sir. 30 seconds to rebut.
Sure. I'm going to do one of those shocking, amazing things, Maurice, and generally agree with Joe Lhota.
Just generally?
Yeah, just okay. Because I think it's called Seaport City, if I remember correctly, is the proposal the mayor made. It's not a bad idea. I think it's an ambitious idea. It's not what I would say is the first most important thing to do in terms of resiliency. I've said, and again, I don't have a lot of trouble disagreeing with Michael Bloomberg when I think he's wrong, but on resiliency, I actually think he's right. I think the resiliency plan he put forward is a great blueprint for the future of this city. The focus on restoring wetlands, restoring dunes, having portable barriers. I think this is a lot of the right things. It's the affordable approach, especially with the federal aid we expect. Okay. I think Seaport City could be part of the solution. I think it is difficult. Could be expensive, but I think it could also be something that ultimately improves the safety and resiliency of the city if we could find a way to fund it.
I think when we were saying...
It's the only thing that Bloomberg put forward in that report that will pay for itself with the real property taxes that both the residential housing, the mixed-use residential housing, and the commercial buildings would put there. All the rest of that report cost $20 billion.
Thank you. And I think when we were saying landfill, we were talking about the same thing.
And Maurice, we had our kumbaya moment. I hope you just want to say for the record.
This is it right now. Regarding federal Sandy aid, Mr. de Blasio, you have stated you have 3 priorities with this federal money: living wage jobs, affordable housing, and health needs of the community long term. Now, this was hard-fought money, as you know. It took a mighty effort to get it from Congress, as you know. How is it appropriate to redirect such funds when the money was specified to help victims recover from Sandy?
Maurice, to be clear, this is all for victims. Everything I talked about is for victims of Sandy and areas of the city that were affected by Sandy. What I'm saying is, you know, we have, for example, in many parts of the city that were affected, very old public housing that's now under even more duress because of what happened during Sandy. We had a lot of parts of the city that were affected by Sandy, the Rockaways, Coney Island, areas that were hurting already. Red Hook, Brooklyn. I remember going into the Red Hook houses 2 weeks after Sandy hit. Still everything pitch black at night, no electricity, people really suffering from the experience in so many ways. What I'm saying is let's take the federal aid and, of course, do the fundamental work of resiliency and recovery we have to do, but let's make sure in the process people who were affected by Sandy have the first opportunity for those jobs. People who were affected by Sandy have an opportunity to get better affordable housing in the process. We have to do a lot with that federal money coming in. It's a crucial moment in this city's history to get some things right and to right some wrongs. Particularly the Rockaways are a classic example.
Thank you, sir.
A neighborhood that was forgotten for so many years by city government. So I think it's crucial to maximize the use of that money on behalf of the people affected.
Thank you. Mr. Lhota, 30 seconds to rebut.
Mr. de Blasio's answer is evolving, because what he did say in the Rockaways 3 weeks ago was exactly what you said, Maurice. Let's use it for other things other than the repair and the replacement of what was destroyed in Hurricane Sandy. Immediately after that, the folks in the Rockaways were completely up in arms. The people out in Staten Island, the South Shore of Staten Island, where homes are still devastated, where people are not back into their homes, they want that money used for what the state of New York and the city of New York asked for. That's to repair and replace their homes. That's what that money should be used for. But more importantly, the city of New York is pre-funding it. This is money that's going to go back into our budget to make sure that we don't have a hole in it. I'm just concerned Mr. de Blasio's efforts to do other things with it it's going to destroy the entire process.
Well, no, it's not going to destroy. Again, I would ask that Mr. Lhota not use incendiary terms. It's not going to destroy the process. We're talking about how to use this money to help the people affected. For example, folks on the South Shore of Staten Island lost their homes, lost their businesses, lost a huge amount of money just surviving since Sandy. Let's get them some of the job opportunities created by this federal aid. What I'm saying is I don't want to see a lot of good work done and all the money flow to out-of-state contractors, for example. I want to make sure that the spending we do maximally helps the very same people affected and gives them a little more economic opportunity. I believe we can do both.
Thank you, sir. Let's move on. Mr. Lhota, you've apologized for calling Mayor Bloomberg an idiot. And Port Authority police, mall cops.
Sure.
What kind of talk is that for a mayor? And is that the kind of thing we could expect for 4 years if you win?
It's not the kind of thing you can expect for 4 years. Here's what happened, and I may need more than a minute to explain it. But I was on the phone with the governor's office, and they told me to hold on because Mayor Bloomberg was about to do a press conference. I just told the governor's office that we were going to be opening the Midtown Tunnel tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Mike Bloomberg gets up, and he makes a statement that I don't think the Midtown Tunnel will open up for weeks on end, the amount of damage, yada, yada, yada. Believe me, when I heard that statement, unfortunately, I had a New York Times reporter tailing me the whole day. I told the governor's director of operations, what an idiot. That's what I said. He made a statement that was completely wrong. I apologize because the New York Times said I called him an idiot. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But the fact of the matter is, I have always called it the way I see it. I will do that as mayor. And if I'm wrong, I'll apologize. And if I'm not wrong, I'm going to stick with it. That's who I am.
The part about mall cops?
Oh, the part about mall cops, I was in the middle of a debate with the National Organization for Women. The president of NOW here in New York, Sandra Sonio, said to me, you know, the JFK airport is the epicenter of human trafficking in the United States. What should we do about it? And what I basically said was the following, that the Port Authority Police needs to work much more closer with both the NYPD and federal law enforcement and not act like the words you used, which I will never use again.
Okay, I think we got it. I think we got it. You know what? Let's move on.
Wait, I have to respond to this because there is a pattern here. Let's be clear. He said a moment ago I would annihilate charter schools. He said I would destroy our efforts at Sandy 8 if I tried to make sure that people affected by Sandy got jobs. He called the mayor an idiot. He called law enforcement officials mall cops. He insulted law enforcement officials. That's not what a mayor does. A mayor unifies. A mayor shows respect. A mayor makes sure we set a positive tone in the city. We have to do tough things in city government, but we do it from the perspective of respecting the people we work with and the people we work for. And I haven't seen that in Mr. Lhota's approach.
Thank you both. Let's move on.
During my entire career, I've done nothing but work with people and bring them together.
Your ad doesn't look like something that's trying to bring people together, Mr. Lhota.
It's trying to tell people what would happen to you and how dangerously reckless you are.
It's race baiting and fear mongering. You know it.
Stop.
You know it.
There's nothing race baiting about that.
There's nothing race baiting about it.
You want to throw out the race card?
I just said it.
Let's talk about the various different mask cards that are put out for the thousands of people that are killed in this city. Let's talk about the report cards for the kids who are being kept in failing schools. Let's talk about the scorecard that says New York City is the highest taxed city in the country. Don't tell me I threw out the race card, because there is nothing racial in there. And Bill, you cannot stoop that low to bring that up.
As upset as he wants to be.
I'm not upset.
But the bottom line is, his ad depicted images of riots, of dead bodies in the streets, of racial imagery, clearly meant to be fear-mongering. Go look at your own ad. Go look at your own ad.
You tell
Anybody who looks at that ad knows what he's up to, and is what his boss Rudy Giuliani used to be up to, and it's not what a mayor should be doing.
Okay.
Look, I am getting sick and tired of you impugning the integrity of Rudy Giuliani. Let me tell you something.
I would be happy to debate Mr. Giuliani.
He was the man who created the Renaissance in this city, who started the programs to make all New Yorkers safe, to expand our economy, to expand our jobs. And you keep impugning his integrity.
He did more to divide the city than any mayor in recent memory.
David Dinkins did more to divide this city during his period of time. The murders that happened, the actual race riots that happened. Believe me, the reason why he got thrown out is because he was divisive.
You know, Joe Lhota is using a Republican right-wing playbook. I have seen this more times than I could count. I compared his ad to the Willie Horton ad because it immediately reminded me of it. I felt like it was the 1980s all over again. We've got to get away from this. Rudy Giuliani did divide us very consciously. And it hurt this city, and it held us back, and we've done a lot better since then.
Okay, gentlemen, please.
What color is the sky in your planet?
Gentlemen,
I didn't know we all had different planets.
Only 10 minutes ago, we had a kumbaya moment.
Mr. Lhota appears to think he has his own planet.
No, I don't have my own planet, but you're making absurd comments.
Only 10 minutes ago,
you're only impugning me.
Only 10 minutes ago, we had a kumbaya moment.
No, he had a kumbaya moment.
What if we put it...
Maurice, I've tried to offer it as a joint kumbaya moment.
What if we say timeout? What if we say timeout? I think we got the idea. We got the idea where you stand. Let's move on. Affordable housing. This is for both of you. We'll start with Mr. de Blasio. You've both made it clear that you would aggressively build affordable housing in our city. I'm curious, so in a city where the average income is around $50,000 a year, what should the rent be for a two-bedroom apartment?
Well, this is what I'd say about affordable housing. We have to build, my plan is 200,000 units over the next 10 years. And we achieve that with very strong requirements for developers that they have to create affordable housing if they want the opportunity.
Sir, I'm looking for a number.
No, I'm getting there. Yeah. They want an opportunity to build in this city, using our pension funds, changing our tax codes to open up vacant land. There's a series of things we have to do. Look, I think what's happening in this city, 46% of people in this city at or near the poverty level. For a lot of folks, annual income 30, 40, 50,000, so they need a rent that they can afford. Might be in the $1,000 to $1,500 a month range, for example.
So given that, would you
force... But that's one example. We're obviously talking about a sliding scale depending on income.
Would you force developers to build it? How can they make that work financially?
Because what we would offer to developers is opportunities that they can't have right now. Look, this is the key part. The public sector controls the spigot of of development. We would give opportunities to developers to develop areas they're not developing yet, to have the height and density to truly make it profitable. But we'd say the only way you get to develop is if you give us enough affordable housing and with enough mix of income levels covered to actually represent what's going on in this city today. We have the power of in New York City to do that, to require that. Mayor Bloomberg wouldn't do it. He was lenient towards the real estate industry. He had many situations where they promised to create affordable housing and then didn't follow through on the promise.
Thank you, sir.
I would make it a requirement.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota, same question.
Somewhere between $750 and $1,250 for someone who's making $50,000 a year, and I'm presuming it's a family. That's what the number needs to be. We need to subsidize these homes by giving them tax breaks on the real property tax. What I've talked about, and by the way, Mr. de Blasio said I've done nothing in affordable housing. Well, let me tell you, for 5 years of my life, I did nothing but finance lower and moderate income housing here in New York, in the state of Connecticut, and in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My experience is vast and broad on the financing side. But here's what we also need to do. We need to find out where we can build it. I want every piece of surplus property that's owned by a state agency. As mayor, I want to use it to build affordable housing. I also want, for the 30 or 35 post offices that the post office wants to sell and make market rate housing, I don't want that to happen. I want it as mayor, and I want to be able to make it affordable housing. It can be done in this city. We just have to focus on it and use our tax policies to make that an incentive program.
Next topic, gentlemen, selling off public assets. There's a proposal to sell a portion of Flushing Meadows Park for a pro soccer stadium. And there are other plans to sell public property to private developers. Under what circumstances do you believe that public assets should be sold to private developers? Let's start with Mr. Lhota.
We have to be very, very careful when we sell public assets to private developers. What we should be doing, if anything, is having a long-term lease. And so the property stays with the city and you have a stream of income over time, and then at the end the property comes back to the city. That way it makes sense and it actually stays as an asset of the city of New York. But here's what I'll tell you about the soccer stadium. It shouldn't be in that park. We don't have enough park space in the city. I don't like when we alienate any portion of a park for a private sector development of any type. So I believe that we need to be very careful when we sell park space. And I'm not sure I buy into it that you can take park space and then get park space not even contiguous and say that it's a benefit to the city of New York. We can't give up our precious park space. It really enhances our quality of life.
Mr. de Blasio, 1 minute, same question.
Sure. Look, the history of this city is filled with giveaways to big corporations, giveaways to sports teams. It's time to recognize that the public's interest needs to come first. So, for example, when it comes to a sports team that wants some parkland, well, look, in most cases, it shouldn't happen. The only condition under which it might happen is if they truly can give us appropriate replacement parkland, and that's something that the community needs to play a real role in judging the quality of, and operating money for the park. Flushing Meadows is a great example. Extraordinary park, the most important park in Queens. Thousands and thousands of families use it constantly. For many families, that's where they go for their, in effect, for their summer vacation. But it's not in the greatest shape. If there was going to be a stadium there that gave us the right conditions and gave us enough financial subsidy to make that park better, that's worth discussing. But no giveaways. If teams think that they can dictate the rules, they got another thing coming, and we don't need soccer unless it's going to be done on the people's terms. And that's, by the way, true for the larger question of corporate subsidies. One of the things I've said is let's get away from subsidizing big corporations and use that money instead to help people at the grassroots, for example, small businesses.
Thank you both. Now for our lightning round. You know how this works. I give you a question.
We are familiar with the lightning round procedure.
Just for our viewers, 1 or 2 words as an answer. Mr. de Blasio, first for you. Do you own a gun?
No.
Mr. Lhota?
I do not, no.
Mr. Lhota, should the city charge $20 to $25 to visit the 9/11 Memorial, which is going to open in a first term?
It's unfortunate that we're in this situation. No, it should be a federal museum, not a city museum. What happened here didn't just happen to the city of New York. What happened on 9/11 happened to the United States of America. So it needs to be treated just like the Smithsonian and all the other federal-related museums.
Mr. de Blasio?
I think we need to work to get that cost down. I think federal aid should be a part of it.
Okay, Mr. de Blasio, excluding family moments, what's been the best day of your life?
Excluding family moments?
Yes, sir.
That's hard to do because the best days by far have been the family moments. Look, I was incredibly proud when I graduated from NYU. That was certainly one of the great days of my life.
Okay, Mr. Lhota?
I was going to say when my daughter graduated, but that's a family moment. Probably the next best day of my life is when we cut the ribbon to close Fresh Kills. It was a project that I worked on. It was a project that people had worked on for 20 years. I was able to develop the plan, get it done, and to me, it still brings me joy every time I'm on Staten Island.
Best day, yeah, this is a lightning round. Mr. Lhota, what's your biggest regret?
Calling cops a name that I shouldn't have called.
Mr. de Blasio. Mr. de Blasio, biggest regret?
My regret is that I thought that Mayor Bloomberg would do mayoral control in fairness to parents and communities.
Your biggest regret?
Right. No, I'm saying I supported it, thinking he would be sensitive to parents and communities, and he wasn't. And I think I should have been more careful.
Okay, Mr. de Blasio, what would your wife say is your best quality to make you a good mayor in this town?
I thought you were going to do the other side, too, because she's listening and she has opinions on this matter. What best quality to make a mayor? That I care about people, that I really, truly care about every kind of New Yorker, the same way I care about my own family.
Mr. Lhota, what would your wife say?
Tamara would say that I talk to everybody, I listen to everybody. Some people also think that's my greatest weakness. I don't believe that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now it's the opportunity for the candidates to ask each other a question. Mr. Lhota, you asked the first one.
Great. Bill, you were in the administration of David Dinkins. During that period of time, there were 2,000 plus murders a year. There was a race riot during that period of time. You took phone calls from the community in Crown Heights, and you sat on it. Please tell me what this means and how you would now react to a crisis in the city of New York.
Here we go again. Mr. Lhota is misrepresenting the facts. And look, the bottom line, I've said, that was a tragic moment in our city's history, and what I learned from that moment is that we have to use overwhelming force when we're confronted with such a situation. I'd also like to note that that same administration was the one that achieved the Safe Streets, Safe City program that brought our police force up to 38,000 officers and allowed us to start turning the corner on crime and bringing us to where we are today. So I think it's important to look at history the way it really was and not ascribe to people a role they didn't play. More importantly, it's important to recognize the full history of that administration and what was done right and what helped us to become a safer city.
Mr. de Blasio, your question for Mr. Lhota.
Absolutely. Mr. Lhota, you know, during the Republican primary, when you were seeking the support of conservative Republicans, you went to a Tea Party gathering in Staten Island. You explicitly asked for the support of Tea Party activists. In fact, you told them they should be comforted that, in quote, many, many ways, their philosophy was similar to yours, the same Tea Party that just shut down our government. I think it was the same gathering where you told them that it should be easier to get gun permits in the city of New York. So my question is simply, are you comfortable with the fact that you sought Tea Party support for your candidacy in the Republican primary?
You know, Bill, you talk about tea so much, you remind me of the Mad Hatter. I'll be honest with you. The idea, I was invited to go talk to the Tea Party. I went out there and talked. And there are some things I agree with them on. I agree in what they believe in the Constitution. I totally disagree with what they did in Washington.
You sought their support. Let's be clear, you didn't just go for the purpose of hanging out with them. You sought their support.
I was running against a guy.
You just said you sought the support of the Tea Party in the Republican primary. Is that accurate?
I sought the support of everyone on Staten Island because I was running against a guy who actually ended up spending somewhere between $12 and $13 million impugning my integrity. I went all over Staten Island.
Can you explain why it's acceptable to seek Tea Party support when the Tea Party works against the interests of New York City every single day?
Honestly, you are the Mad Hatter. All you want to do is talk about tea. Listen, I wanted the support of all New York. I am going to be the mayor of all New York. I am not going to divide the city. I am not going to, in any way, shape, or form, say, I'm going to talk to that person, but I'm not going to talk to that person.
And you're on the Conservative Party line, the Conservative Party line.
How many questions does he get to ask?
The Conservative Party that opposes a woman's right to choose.
Maurice, sir, we're going to move on. I think we got the idea. Next question. Mr. de Blasio, you have said your wife, Shirlane, heck of a good speechwriter, by the way, is going to be a key part of your administration. What's she going to do?
No, I've said she's going to play a major role in the sense that I think there are great examples of first ladies who go out into communities, listen to what people are concerned about, make sure their voices are heard at City Hall, and address key issues in the city. And I think my wife is going to be an extraordinary asset as we address the problems of the city. So we don't have any set plan. It's just to say clearly she's going to be a partner in all I do, as she has been up to this moment.
Mr. Lhota?
My wife as First Lady will absolutely be my partner. She's already expressed throughout her entire life involvement with making sure children can read. She spent time today in senior homes, making sure that they're getting the proper care. We need to expand what we're doing with seniors right now. Quite honestly, my wife will play an integral role in everything that I do. You know, when I come home at night or early in the morning, she tells me what she thinks. That advice is it's extraordinarily invaluable and has been for the last 25 years.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lhota, people in Upper Manhattan and the boroughs really like green taxis after years of getting no cabs or being passed by cabs throughout the city. A lot of the folks living there, they're starting to rely on them. They really like them. Why would you get rid of green cabs?
Green cabs in Upper Manhattan are absolutely the right thing to do. They are not the right thing to do in the boroughs outside of Manhattan. Right now, we have enough car services, and we need to use technology. We need to have, you know, an app that people can use on their phones, an app that they can use on their iPad.
Shouldn't they be able to just hail a cab?
And let me finish. In addition to the app, we should allow, TLC is run amok. TLC makes up rules that absolutely make no sense. Outside of Manhattan, anybody should be able to get a car service and be able to hail them, not have the car service stay in front of their dispatch office and just get dispatch. They should be allowed to go out and be able to hail and pick up passengers by having them hail.
Mr. de Blasio, same question. What's wrong with green cabs?
Well, look, I think the bottom line here is that we need to make sure that there's good service available for outer borough residents and folks in northern Manhattan, but at the same time protect what's working right now, our car services, particularly in the outer boroughs, our yellow cabs. Look, one of the things I didn't like about Mayor Bloomberg's plan is he didn't talk to the industry, he didn't try and figure out what would work. And in the end, I think the plan he's put together has a lot of holes in it. I've said that I'd start over to make sure that we maximize the ability to do street hails in every part of the city, but protect the strengths of our current industry and the balance of our current industry so it can keep working for the long term in this city.
But sir, the industry is one thing. What about the consumers? What's good for the consumer?
Maurice, this is all about the consumer. My point is that right now, consumers benefit from a yellow taxi industry that works for us and a car service on-call industry that works for us. We can add outer borough hails and upper Manhattan hails into it if we do it the right way. But I think a lot of the mayor's plan is unfortunately going to pit all the pieces against each other and undermine the integrity and the availability of the service for all consumers.
This is my kumbaya moment with Bill de Blasio. I totally agree with them. And you know why we have this point of view? We both live in Brooklyn, and we know how good the car services can be. We shouldn't be able to destroy these businesses and go forward. Mr. de Blasio is absolutely right. The lack of communication between the TLC and the industry is extraordinary. It needs to change. I agree with them on one other thing. Right at the top, all the way down.
Okay, next question, gentlemen. Mr. de Blasio, you got a lot of support from the anti-horse carriage lobby. You called for an immediate end to horse carriage rides in Central Park. You've also received support from the union that's representing the carriage drivers. So, are carriage rides going to continue, or are they going to come to an end?
I have said very clearly we are ending horse carriages in New York City. That would be my plan, my administration's plan. We would need the approval of the City Council, but we'll get it done. Because there's no place for horse carriages anymore in New York City. And by the way, major cities all around the world have been ending this because it's cruel, because it's inhumane, and horses don't belong in the middle of the busiest city in the world. So we will get this done, and we'll get it done quickly. And yes, I received support from a union that feels the other way, but that doesn't change my opinion one bit. And I've made that clear to that union. I'm moving forward on this plan.
So what becomes of the drivers?
I think the drivers can have a new opportunity to use what I've proposed, replica electric cars that look like cars from, say, the 1920s and 30s, would cover the same routes, but would go with electric power. Those new jobs in our thriving tourist industry, I would make available first come, first serve to the folks who currently have the horse carriage.
Mr. Lhota, same question. Carriage rides continue or end?
Carriage rides should end using horses. We need to completely redo our carriages. We don't need to have antique cars to do it. Other cities that have gotten rid of the horses have put motors inside of those same carriages. And then the drivers are allowed to have those romantic rides all the way through Central Park. That's what we should do. Where Bill got in trouble with this whole thing is that he said he was going to eliminate it on day one. I understand. I agree with them. We need to eliminate it. We need to eliminate it as fast as possible.
Has either of you taken a carriage ride, by the way?
Many, many years ago, when I was young, but not recently.
Mr. Lhota?
Nope.
No. Okay. Moving on. Mr. Lhota, you've said you want the city to take control of all the MTA bridges and tunnels, correct? Take control away from New York State. How do you plan to make that happen? Aren't you leaving the door open for tolls on all of the East River bridges?
No, it has nothing to do with tolls on the East River bridges. It has to deal with the fact that the MTA is really destroying the relationship that it has with its bridge and tunnel division. They are increasing those fares far beyond what they should be. They've gone up significantly. Look, when Governor Rockefeller took the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authority away from the City of New York and then the Board of Estimate, it needs to come back. It should be the mayor and the city council that determines the tolls. Right now, those bridge and tunnels are actually charging $1.4 billion, and it's generating a little over $600 million in excess cash flow, free cash flow. That money is going to subsidize the Long Island Railroad and Metro North and the subway system. I understand the need to subsidize them, but at the same time, it's the same state that's keeping to reducing the subsidies to our mass transit in New York. We need to get control. $15 to go across round trip any one of the Triborough Bridge and Tunnel Authorities and their major bridges is absolutely wrong. It's destroying the economy, it's destroying economic development, and it's really hurting people who want to go visit their families in any other part of the city. Whether you go from Queens to the Bronx to visit Grandma, it costs $15. Same thing with the Verrazano Bridge.
Thank you, sir. Mr. de Blasio, 1 minute to rebut.
Well, first of all, you know, when Mr. Lhota ran the MTA, there were fare increases, there were toll increases. So, you know, I hope there's consistency in his approach here. But look, what I'm saying is this. Whenever we ask for something to be run by the City of New York that currently is not, the central question is what kind of financing dynamics exist. I don't want a situation that makes us financially less strong. I love the notion, obviously, of the city being able to control its own destiny more. There's many areas where we have to do this. For example, strengthening our rent regulation and gaining that power back from Albany, or the ability to make our own decisions on revenue. We shouldn't have to go to Albany on things like that. But if we're going to take control of certain assets, we have to make sure that we don't end up financially losing in the bargain. We're going to go through some tough fiscal times in the next few years, in particular because of the open labor contract. So whatever transaction might occur, it cannot make the City of New York less financially sound.
Thank you, sir. One more question here, please. Mr. de Blasio, would you take out the tables and chairs from Times Square and Herald Square and reopen Broadway?
I have profoundly mixed feelings on this issue. I'm a motorist myself, and I was often frustrated. And then I've also seen, on the other hand, that it does seem to have a positive impact on the tourist industry. So for me, the jury's out on that particular question. I think it's worth assessing what the impact has been on traffic, what the impact has been on surrounding businesses. I would keep an open mind.
Same question, Mr. Lhota.
I, too, have a split mind. You know, I don't understand why it's there 24 hours a day. Why can't we do it on a part-time basis, open it up during periods of time when there's a lot of traffic, during rush hour, and then put it back? Look, we've got 300,000 workers in the City of New York. We can find a place to put the chairs and put the tables and then put it back, which are really being used mostly by tourists. It's important to have a tourist industry in New York, but at the same time, we need to get traffic moving around this island.
Okay, split on that. 30 seconds for this one, gentlemen. Gambling. With the proliferation of racinos and some people describing gambling as a regressive tax on the poor, do you support the expansion of gambling? Mr. de Blasio.
I do. I support the referendum, and I think Governor Cuomo's right on this. Look, the bottom line is a lot of gambling is happening in states around us. A lot of New Yorkers are going there and spending money, which is creating jobs in those states and giving those states revenue that we need here. So gambling, it's a part of life, and we have to take advantage of the fact that if it's going to exist, like it or not, if it's going to exist, let's make the most of it for the people of New York City, New York State, by making sure revenue comes from gambling that stays in our own state. Jobs come from gambling that our own people get. That's why I think it's a common sense measure.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lhota, gambling?
I agree with Governor Cuomo. We should pass this constitutional amendment. Gambling is going to be here in New York State. We ought to be able to take advantage of it and use the proceeds of that to fund our education system.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. It is time now for closing statements. And by coin toss, Mr. Lhota, you get to go first.
Well, thank you, Maurice, and thank you for everyone at home who tuned in to listen to tonight. Look, in 2 weeks, we're going to go to the polls. We're going to be able to vote about our future. And to me, our future is our children. We need to make sure that our streets are safe. We need to make sure that we reform our public school system, our entire public school system. And we need to make sure that our children, as well as everyone in New York, has an opportunity for a good job in this city. You know, a few weeks ago, I marched with parents across the Brooklyn Bridge. They were all wearing shirts that said, "My child, my choice." Mr. de Blasio wasn't there because he doesn't believe in school choice. When I was deputy mayor, I worked with the NYPD to make our streets safe. Mr. de Blasio, like he did during this debate, talks up the NYPD, but he has policies that will not make us safe. Look, we are one mayor away from unsafe streets, unsafe schools, and unsafe fiscal policy. I'm the only person who has up on here that has the experience to keep our city strong and safe and protected. Mr. de Blasio does not. So here's my question for all of you out there. In 2 weeks, when you go to vote on November 5th, for your sake, for your child's sake, do you want your vote to be safe or sorry?
Thank you, sir. Mr. de Blasio.
You know, I've been saying throughout this campaign that we're living a tale of two cities right now. Some folks are doing very well in our city. A lot of folks are struggling. Our middle class is disappearing. We can't keep living this way. This status quo is not acceptable for the long term. It won't help make us strong and great for the future. There's some things we can do about it, thank God. And here's some of them that I've talked about. Let's first of all tax the wealthiest New Yorkers so we can have full-day pre-K for every child in the city, after-school programs for every middle school child. That's going to help us all. That's going to make the city stronger, our schools better, our workforce stronger in the future. That's going to help people, including the wealthy, because we'll have a better business climate and a stronger city. Let's create the affordable housing we need so people can live in their own neighborhoods. We don't need more luxury condos in New York City. We've got plenty of them. We need affordable housing for everyday New Yorkers. And we need to protect community hospitals that have so often been under threat. By keeping our hospitals in place, by creating affordable housing, that makes us stronger for the future. That makes New York City a place for everyone. Finally, we need to stay safe. We need a safe city and a fair city. The best way to create safety for the long term is to take the incredible work of the NYPD and strengthen it by ending the quota system for stop and frisk, by ending the profiling, bringing police and community together for the future safety of our city. That's the direction that I want to take us in, a new progressive direction. I'm Bill de Blasio, and I would be honored to earn your vote on November 5th.
Bill de Blasio, Joe Lhota, gentlemen, thank you very much tonight. We also want to thank the City University of New York, the Graduate Center here, as well as the folks at the CUNY TV studios. We want to remind everybody that the election is November 5th. Your vote counts. We hope to see you tonight on CBS 2 News at 11. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I'm Maurice Dubois. Have a good evening.
Through its NYC Votes programs, the Campaign Finance Board connects New Yorkers with the information they need to be informed, engaged voters. Along with these debates, the CFB prints the city's official nonpartisan New York City Voter Guide, produces a video voter guide, and has introduced a new mobile platform, nycvotes.org, which makes election and candidate information available right at your fingertips.
There is a